All right. Hi, everyone. I do just want to start by maybe mentioning a little trigger warning, but I will tell you my topic is sexual harassment. I will not talk about any examples. I will not be discussing any events, anything of that nature. I am simply wanting to share a story of some amazing women and how they are using data science to eradicate, eliminate, and stop sexual harassment in the workplace. But I do understand that the topic can be sensitive and troubling. So if anybody would prefer not to hear about the topic, please feel free to take a break. I also understand that some of you might have drank too much coffee and need a break anyway. So if you still feel like you need to get up and take a break and it has nothing to do with the topic, that is also fine. I am a professor. I am very used to my students just kind of doing other stuff while I talk. So please take that moment if you need to while I'm talking at any point. So please feel comfortable doing that. So my name is Heather Whiteman. I am a teaching professor at the University of Washington. And I teach mostly in our data, analytics, and technology courses in various parts, but especially in our Masters of Science in Information Management, where we have data science, AI, business intelligence, other areas like that. And my particular specialization is in what we call people analytics, which is really focused on the use of data and analytics to understand people at work, in the workplace, and the work itself. And within that field, what I really look at is how can we use data, analytics, and technology to make the workplace a better place. So I focus on studying the ways that we can leverage data for fixing some systemic problems, for bringing equality, fairness, equity into the workplace. And part of what I do in that is try to find really great examples of how we can do this and then amplifying them and bring more in. So the study that I want to share with you today is a case study that I published earlier this year about a really exciting organization that is based in Peru, but now is expanding globally. And I want to share with you what's in this case study. So for those not in the academic field, this is behind a paywall and you would have a hard time getting to it. So now you all get it for free. But this is the story of an organization based originally in Latin America, expanding now. And the problem really is centered in a worldwide issue, which is sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a problem the world over, and it is particularly problematic in Latin America. For those in the workplace, 3 out of 10 people will experience sexual harassment every year, and that number is even higher for women. I would like to call out that statistic is not in a lifetime, that's in a year. When you think about the impact that has on a person's life, experience, the workplace, you can understand the reach and the impact. Despite that, only about half of people who have experienced harassment ever tell anyone that it happened. And when they do, it's usually only to their friends and family and no one else. It's been studied and found that only about 1% of cases ever actually get reported in any kind of formal process. So this issue that is pervasive and wide is barely making it into the data sets, into the processes for formally addressing and accounting for it. And this was a problem that some women had particular issue with and wanted to make a difference. So the case that I really dove into, I had the opportunity to meet Marlena Malero, who was a lawyer and a master's in gender studies, who was working as a partner in a law firm, worked on many cases involving sexual harassment. And after multiple cases where there were instances of simply waiting for individuals to come forward and make complaints before any action came through, Marlena was struggling with this notion of, I don't want to just react. I want to act. And how do we get at this invisible problem? Everyone knows this is here, but nobody's talking about it. How do we do something more than wait and wait to hear from the very few people who ever even say anything? It just so happened that Marlena was really into running. So Marlena joined a running group and would go running every morning. She joined a women's running group, and fate decided to put her next to Yvonne here. And Yvonne Quinones and Marlena hit it off. They would be jogging through the streets of Lima, Peru, and talking about their lives, about their frustrations. And it just so happened that they hit it off. Now, Yvonne was a serial entrepreneur, one of the first female entrepreneurs in Peru, and really had a strong background in the technology side. Marlena wanted to do something more about this pervasive problem. The two got to talking and decided, let's do something about this. They got together and founded what was called Gender Lab. Gender Lab started out a bit in the consulting side, leaning on Marlena's legal background, and then realized the power of data. They started capturing lots of data to find, well, what are the most effective ways to go after these problems? How do we understand it more deeply? And then as the pandemic hit, they realized we need more data. We need more technology. We need to scale. This is a massive, massive problem, and we need to be able to get at it at scale. So that's when they really leaned in to the notion of how can we leverage technology? How can we leverage data science? How can we build into this? Now, Gender Lab started out as a broader concept around all forms of equality and equity, but they decided to focus in on sexual harassment so that they could be targeted and really dive in. And when they went after this, they said, we're gonna have an approach where we actually ask. We don't wait to hear. We ask, what's happening? What's going on? And then we use data to diagnose to get to where we can have a solution. This is the opposite approach of what had been happening. So traditionally, and sadly, I would say still today in most places, the approach is to just wait. To wait for someone to complain. To wait for someone to go to some authority. And only then are these issues maybe being dealt by a very small number of people in a very confidential, very manual way that may or may not ever get acted on, and most likely is held incredibly confidential, even more confidential than the privacy needs of the individuals involved might require for their own personal preferences. And because of that, it's becoming a hidden secret, meaning it's not actually hidden at all, nobody's talking about it. So the opposite of that traditional approach is to go out and proactively look at it. The ELSA approach says we are gonna ask everybody what's happening, and we're gonna get a sense of what's going on, and we're gonna use data and technology to help us do that and to help us get to the outcomes. As Marlena puts it, people are willing to say something. They're just not willing to say it to a broken system that's not going to protect them and not going to take care of them. And quite frankly, they were right. They built out a system where they asked, oh, sorry, I thought it was on a different slide. There we go. They built out a system where they asked people, what is going on? Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever seen this? What's happening in your organization? What do you know about the situation? Because of the deep gender studies legal background, there were psychometrically validated questions to even assess the level of tolerance. So we're getting measures about things like intersectionality and how people will respond or not respond to what they believe is or isn't considered harassment, and doing deep, deep analyses of organizations to identify the problems within them. Now, this is difficult to do because the topic is sensitive. People are fearful talking about it. So the organization had to spend a lot of time on user experience, on system design of security to get the trust of people to be able to gather and get this data along the way. With the data, and Elsa has, at the time that I wrote this case study, at about 200,000 different case points that they were pulling in, building their algorithms off of. It was, to my knowledge, the largest data set in the world on workplace sexual harassment. And they were able to use it to really build out algorithms based both on what is happening, but also what are the most effective treatment and interventions for different types of problems. So the algorithms are actually designed specifically to say, what is the problem here in this organization, at this place, in this time, with this composition of people? So rather than simply taking action with some generic, let's make everybody take sexual harassment training and check the box, the process is, let's find out what's actually the problem here. What are the different pieces going on? What are the mindsets? Where's the tolerance at? What's the organization doing? Let's use what we know through data science to build personalized, customized action plans that say, no, your biggest problem is this thing. These actions have been proven to actually close the gap. Implement them, and then you will make the biggest progress and you will be able to bring it out. And so they've been able to build these algorithms to bring truly personalized recommendation systems to the organization. The tools themselves do not just focus straight for the organization. They also have many features available for the individuals as well. So the individuals have access to generative AI tools where they can get help and support for how to handle a situation if they would like to move forward with it. They also have the opportunity to get training and access and many other pieces along the way. I want to, and this is, yeah, I think I was just talking about this. I want to go back for a moment just to show the impact piece that I skipped over here. One of the things that the ELSA model is able to do is it's also able to quantify the cost and impact of harassment on an organization, as well as the cost of inaction. And so through the data, they've actually been able to quantify how much lost productivity, how much impact to the organization's outcomes, what this is being done. And they can give the organization an actual dollar amount that says, this is the amount of money your company is losing because of what's happening underneath the surface that you refuse to acknowledge. And here's how much it's going to cost you if you do nothing. And because they can do that, they're able to give a true business case rather than just a moral case for taking action. And ELSA has been wildly successful so far. They have, at the time that I wrote this case study, they had reached about 100 companies at the time. They had reached 500,000 employees, and were really focusing on places where they had higher proportions of women so that they could help address the problem where it is a little more prevalent. For the organizations that had already been using this approach for over a year, we're able to track over time how the reduction had been. They had found 60% reduction in the companies that was there. So organizations that were experiencing about 35% of individuals having in some way been impacted directly by harassment, we're seeing that number drop down to like 12% within a year. And not just that, but mindsets, values, and the conversation was changing. So where else is going, and the reason that we kind of have this case study, for those of you who haven't read case studies, the idea is they leave on big questions that aren't answered. So the big questions for ELSA right now is they are working to scale fast. They're looking at how do we prioritize investments in our different fields. So specifically, they are looking at how do we want to expand our data use with things like machine learning and data science applications. Now, with where we are with natural language processing, they are considering expanding to more qualitative data so that they can then mine the qualitative information. We're also talking about blockchain so that we can have immutable records of what has happened, which is particularly useful when you're dealing with situations where corruption often comes in and covers up the facts and instances, and how can blockchain come in and keep a permanent record of that kind of thing. And also discussing how can we expand the social mission. If we can do this with sexual harassment, can we do it for bullying? Can we do it for corruption? Can we do it for other measures of equity and equality and use the same approach? And so this is where ELSA is heading today. And the real takeaways that I will just leave you with, and the reason why I find the Elsa story such an exciting story to share, is they show us the power of making the invisible visible. They put out there, something is happening, we know it's there, let's go get the data. And let's get the data to show us what to do, and let's take action. I think it's a beautiful story of using technology to boost our empathy, to say, how can we make social change? The title of the case is even called Social Entrepreneurship, and how we have the social impact. And that is something that they are going to be continuing to do, is to scale and do it wider. And so my comment for all of you is, hopefully you can find ways to use your data skills to really put purpose behind that and make a difference, much in the same way these wonderful entrepreneurial spirits did here. And that was what I wanted to share with you. So thank you all for letting me share their story.